Listening to music is easy to take for granted today, but that was not the case in the late 19th and early 20th centuries. An Ohio museum traces the history of sound recording back to the phonograph and displays dozens of models that changed through the years.
The Music Makers Museum has an impressive collection of phonographs, with nearly 40 of them on display. The museum near Hillsboro, Ohio, was founded by Charlotte and Rodney Pack in 2019. The couple has displayed the collection of phonographs for several years and decided to open a museum to share it with the public. The couple owned an antique store in the 90s, and that's when Rodney Pack bought his first phonograph. As he acquired more, restoring them became routine.
My big thing was either get one and start to tear it apart, polish every screw, bolt, and everything to kind of put it back together and kind of give it new life.
For several years, the couple shared the phonographs with school groups and displayed them at museums and libraries.
And then over the years, we continued to collect different phonographs. And at one point, we realized that we had enough phonographs that they really showed the progression and the development of the recording industry and how people listen to music.
The museum walks people through the history of sound recording. The exhibits start with information about Thomas Edison, who invented the phonograph in 1877. The discovery was significant because prior to this time, the human voice had never been recorded and played back.
He recorded his voice on it and it worked right away. And I guess they were just like all taken back, like, wow, this really worked. And Edison was impressed with it enough that he called it his baby because he said, we didn't make it happen, it just was there just waiting for us to find it.
While Edison is credited for inventing the phonograph, others quickly jumped in to make the original phonograph better.
So we started out actually with a tinfoil cylinder. Just think about a piece of aluminum. You know, you cannot get very many recordings on that because if you think about a piece of aluminum foil, it would tear. And then Alexander Graham Bell came up with the brown wax cylinder. And that was a little harder. You could get more plays out of it, but it was only 2 minutes. You could only get one song. And it didn't last very well either.
The phonograph was called the talking machine, and it was easy for anyone to play it. Rodney Pack demonstrates how one is played. The phonograph was a significant discovery because before it came along, the only way to hear music was to play it yourself or to listen to someone else play live music.
It just opened a new world of possibilities to people, that they could hear different styles of music. They could hear professional musicians, like an opera singer. You know, if you live in a rural area and you've never had a chance to go hear the opera, you can actually hear the opera yourself. So it brought music into the home. I think that's one of the key things about the phonograph.
Before phonographs became a fixture in people's homes, there were other places to hear one, like opera houses, where demonstrations were common. People could also listen to music by visiting a penny arcade.
And one of the ways that people might learn about a phonograph was to go to a penny arcade, which actually started here in Ohio, in Cleveland and Cincinnati. A storefront owner decided to put 12 phonographs in the store, and they had listening tubes. And we think of the horns, but they actually had listening tubes, kind of like our modern day earbuds to begin with, and they would pay a penny to hear a song.
This phonograph, called the Eagle, is one of Rodney Pack's favorites of the collection.
There's a little machine in there that barely looks like a clockworks type of device with a horn on it. It sold for a $10 gold piece, which they called an Eagle. And so that's how it got its nickname. And it's the first phonograph that was cheap enough that about any family could afford to buy one, and they did.
Thomas Edison's vision was to have a phonograph in every home, and they were quite popular starting in the early 20th century. The Music Makers Museum also features inspirational stories of various artists. Ada Jones, whose music was well known from 1880 until the 1920s, was the first popular artist to record on a cylinder. Jones's career started on vaudeville when she was only 8 years old.
She had a bold personality. She had a strong voice, which you had to have in 1880, because you may not realize it, but in 1880, you had to record every single cylinder individually. There was no mass production. So she might take a day and sing the same song 50 times.
Jones was often teased and bullied during her performances, and she also suffered from epilepsy. Charlotte Pack says Jones always worked through these various challenges.
She would actually have a seizure and end up on the ground, but that didn't stop her. She just got herself back together, she got back up, and went back to recording. And that's what that determination and perseverance and strong personality allowed her to become the first popular female recording artist.
The museum has a display on Nipper the dog looking into a phonograph. This iconic image was used in advertisements by the Victor Talking Machine Company, a manufacturer of phonographs in the early 20th century. Several other global companies also used Nipper's image in ads. As phonographs became more popular, there was quickly a need for more music. Thomas Edison introduced a gold-molded cylinder, which was able to be mass-produced. Other changes to the look of the phonograph came in about 1910.
You'll notice something changes in this area. The horns are no longer outside, they're inside. People are wanting phonographs to look more like a piece of furniture instead of the horn sticking in the rooms and being cumbersome.
Several years later, jazz came along. The first recorded jazz record was released in March of 1917. Country music, often called rural music at first, also became popular at this time.
They give him his orders at Monroe, Virginia, saying, Pete, you're way behind time. This is not 38, but it's 497. You must put her in center on time.
Vernon Dalhart's 1924 recording of The Wreck of the Old 97 was the first country song that sold 1 million copies. Thomas Edison underestimated the power of radio when it first started and became popular in the 1920s.
And Edison wasn't really wanting to get into radio. He had the opinion at that point that it was just a fad and it'd go away, and he thought the phonograph was here to stay, and that was kind of his take on it. So his son had to deal with closing the phonograph companies.
A photo in the museum is the best illustration of what happened. A family sitting around the radio with a phonograph in the background. Edison's phonograph company closed in 1929. The museum also displays other significant areas of music and recording throughout the years. Rosie the Riveter was a key figure during the World War II era. There's also an ad from the Victor Company about its first portable Victrola, showing people listening to it on the beach. The museum also recalls the era of the jukebox. The model on display is the forerunner to the one seen in the popular TV show Happy Days. There are also displays on some of the different formats that were released throughout the years, including the 8-track and the cassette tape. The museum timeline ends in the year 2000, when Apple released its first iPod. One aspect that makes the Music Makers Museum so unique is that you can hear the entire collection of phonographs, which have been restored. Charlotte and Rodney Pack hope that their unique display of voices and music from the past will continue to inspire future generations.
Good to me, you're so heavenly. You're the one I like. We're like Jack and Jill.